When a woman is born into one of her country's oldest and most prominent families, the world often decides her story before she has a chance to live it. Love Marie Ongpauco entered the world with a name that carried great expectations, but for most of her early years, that name was both her inheritance and her prison. But what happens when she refuses to be defined by it? And what happens when this woman decides to write her own story? Join us as we explore the intense life, struggles, and quiet triumphs of Love Marie, the Heart Evangelista. The girl behind the luxury. Born on Valentine's Day 1985 to an upper-class family, Love Marie Payawal Ongpauco was born in Manila, a region in the Philippines. The family name was tied to one of the most successful businesses in the country, one that was a household name across the region. This came with lots of old money and tall expectations, as the family's wealth had lasted long before the biggest businesses in the country found their footing. Her mother's family had similar roots, with her father owning a sugar company in Camarines Sur in Bicol. This background gave a life shaped by strict rules and hierarchy. There were rules about where she could go, who she could see, and how she presented herself outside the home. Even her education was set in stone, having to attend Colegio de San Austin in Makati. However, this was where things got interesting. This college was a place most girls on their own would have preferred not to go at the time, as discipline and order were reinforced daily with little room for self-expression and identity. Little love. Marie was born the youngest of 5 children, growing alongside her brother Miguel and sisters Marjorie, Michelle, Camille, and Lisa. So following traditional protocols, she was placed last in every decision made, and social exposure was very limited. Every conversation around her had more to do with maintaining the family's status and honoring their last name. And while these expectations weren't rubbed in her face all the time, the actions of those around her perfectly reflected that reality. And before she could settle into any fixed version of that life, they relocated to San Francisco when she was barely 7 years old, before coming back to the Philippines not long after. Love Marie's time in California exposed her to a life completely different from everything she'd known growing up. That planted a fire within her, one that would be the turning point of her story. Sometime after her parents returned, she was noticed by a talent scout and got invited to an audition. What came next were multiple offers for her to appear on television, and soon after, Love Marie signed with ABS-CBN, a prominent network in the Philippines, and became part of the company's program for cultivating young talent. Realizing her potential in the industry, she was transferred to the Distance Learning Center, where she faced a whole new side of life. With long filming schedules stretching till midnight and mentally numbing improvisations forced on set, the one thing that kept her going was the fun of doing things beyond the rules provided by her parents. Except this environment wasn't all that different in retrospect. But as she kept appearing more frequently on television, her presence grew, leading to her television debut in the year 2000. This was where her life changed forever. Her role as Missy in the G-Mix series got her a PMPC Star Award for Best New Female Television Personality in 2001, at a point when her career had barely begun. And what followed were magazine features, interviews, and promotional appearances. Her public name was known everywhere. Heart Evangelista. This new identity came with its thrills. Being recognized and adored in public, fans approaching her and showing appreciation at malls and public events, and even outside taping locations. But as time went on, her schedule became more demanding. Worse yet, she found herself having to navigate 2 sets of expectations. One from her family, rooted in tradition and strict control, even as an adult still obligated to honor her last name. In the modern West, freedom and autonomy is normal for many grown-ups. Women typically choose partners, careers, and lifestyles freely. The family had weak control over that. But where she came from, a grown woman by tradition often still needs family approval for career decisions and public behavior. Financial independence, even when legally earned, is still culturally owned by the parents and tied to obedience. Deviation from the rules laid out by cultural hierarchy often led to exclusion from the family and reduced moral support. On the other side, there was immense pressure coming from the showbiz industry that demanded certain lifestyles and habits that garnered public appeal. Love Marie's life was shaped by these expectations. They shaped how she dressed, how she spoke, and her quick response to the industry's highly demanding work ethic. But who was she beyond these strict demands and expectations? Love Marie found herself struggling with this whole trying to manage the best of both worlds. But over time, it only got more difficult. As the unpredictable industry came with influences and relationships that couldn't be easily controlled, Love Marie's parents showed concerns about the people she interacted with, the hours she kept, and the strange direction her life was taking. The restrictions began to tighten, bringing more limits to her movements, social interactions, and even her involvement in upcoming projects deemed too obscene for someone tied to their family name. But at the same time, her involvement in show business had exposed her to independence in ways she had never seen before. She was able to improvise, interact with colleagues, and handle responsibilities tied to her performance outcome. Among those she interacted with was Jericho Rosales, an established actor in the industry who enjoyed working with her. They had been close since the previous year, but it wasn't until the production of Panday, a fantasy drama released in 2005, that their connection came alive. This romance came up shortly after Rosales had split from a previous relationship, and this fact alone brought in lots of media attention to the controversies surrounding the new person he was with. This attention came with consequences, as Love Marie's parents Ronaldo and Cecilia Ongpauco had firmly said no to the relationship. And this wasn't the first time Love Marie took a strong stand on what she wanted out of life. A few years before, she quit high school to focus more on acting and modeling, a decision that went far from the household framework of higher education and social standing. Every discussion with her parents came with higher tensions than the last. Now, every decision she made in her career now directly seemed to tie in with family. Now, approaching 21, Love Marie was reaching breaking point with her parents and everyone who tried to define her by old home traditions and industry standards. The first cracks were starting to form. And with very high expectations and immense pressure from both sides, would she be able to write her own story? Breaking the old rules. By the mid-2000s, Love Marie's relationship with Jericho Rosales became one of the biggest celebrity pairings in the Philippines. They were appearing everywhere, from industry events, tapings, and most casual outings. No week passed by without a new photo taken and posted of the both of them together. Fans reacted to these posts with glee and hoped their kind of life would find them soon. What they didn't know was that something entirely different was playing out behind the scenes. Her family's objections were getting unbearable. These objections weren't vague, but direct and felt insulting. She would later confess that it was one of the driving forces behind why she started reconsidering the relationship. Heart soon realized that her union with Jericho, while based on mutual admiration and respect, reflected more of her need for independence away from her family's values and cultures, not a real desire to be with him. Additionally, what she didn't know was that her relationship was now playing into the same rules she was trying to avoid. Except this time it had to do with the industry's standards for staying likable and famous as part of a celebrity couple. Love Marie wanted to be free of both, and this led to the difficult decision to part ways with her boyfriend indefinitely. This was hard on both sides, and their mutual decision not to reveal demanded details about the cause triggered the right public reaction she hoped for. No longer would she be marked as the sheltered actress from a wealthy home. Now, she was seen by everyone as someone with strong guts, healthy pride, and mental agency. This intention was further emphasized when Love Marie made the bold decision to leave her family home without giving a public explanation or long announcement to anyone in the family. She did this to mark the end of her old life. Now, she would be fully responsible for her finances and managing her finances without parental oversight on her career. And if disowning and lack of cultural and moral support from family would be the price to pay, then she was willing to take it. Sadly, her career following this demanding shift with higher living expenses didn't take an upward trajectory as she hoped. Projects and opportunities stopped coming as they used to, partly because she was no longer taking on titles that fit with her old teen star image. Now the characters that shone the most were those that demanded more emotional range on screen. For the next few years, Heart Evangelista's future in the acting and fashion industry was looking grim, so much so that the agency she was under was starting to see her as less of an asset. Fortunately, things took a positive turn in 2008 when Love Marie got an offer to work with GMA Network. And though network transfers came with risks, it proved to be a better move than staying with the group that saw her as a depreciating asset. The big problem was that she had to quickly adapt to the new environment, reintroduce herself to viewers who once saw her as the face for content only aimed at children, and establish new connections in the new space. The roles she was offered at GMA Network were very different in time and structure from what she did in her older network. Most of those she worked with were more seasoned in acting and improvisation, with directors and producers demanding sudden shifts and mood swings on sets that felt impossible. At some point, Love Marie felt stuck multiple times on set, using everything in her power not to rudely walk out in the middle of production to cry alone. Thankfully, more opportunities came through modeling and fashion roles with endorsement deals and brand partnerships, keeping the lights on at home at times when she was too mentally exhausted to accept the next big project. While she had attained the personal autonomy she always wanted since she arrived in California at 13, doing so brought a lot of stress and discomfort. Love Marie would later tell of many times when she would wake up every morning with intense anxiety. Life back then felt like a knot in her stomach that never unwinds until she immerses herself in the kind of work that leaves her mentally and physically exhausted. Then she returns home, forces herself to sleep, and then wakes up the next morning feeling anxious enough to repeat the entire cycle all over again. The struggle was so deep she could no longer keep it as private as she used to. Many fans noticed she didn't smile as much as before during interviews and public appearances. She focused less on herself and more on her work, with a cold look that almost made entire episodes awkward. But with those difficulties came a phase of self-exploration. With her free time, she focused on activities that weren't tied to formal work like painting and journaling. However, Love Marie's life was about to take another drastic turn. Sometime in 2011, Love Marie met Chiz Escudero, and learning from the disastrous outcomes that came with making her last relationship public, she did her best to keep everything secret. Escudero at the time was a popular Philippine politician who had served in national positions. The couple were able to keep their relationship secret until 2014, when the leaked evidence had become too strong to ignore. And thanks to how she had handled everything beforehand, no one saw their union as the latest gossip in the world of entertainment, but as a professional fact that needed no more coverage. And just like that, Heart Evangelista had broken the mold set by her family and the industry. She was going to live on her own terms, no matter what. But with wedding bells on the horizon, what would her next phase look like? More struggles, divorce, and redefining herself. On 15th of February 2015, one day after her 30th birthday, Love Marie got married to Francis Chiz Escudero in a ceremony held on Balasan Island. It was at the Balasan Spa within the exclusive resort on Quezon Province, home to only the best elite gatherings away from the unwanted attention of mainland dwellers. The hall was decorated with white wisteria and climbing vines, and unlike the last milestone kept private for the most part, this event was highly documented with curated photographs and controlled media coverage. A leading senator served as the veil sponsor, and among the bridal party were actresses Solen Husaf, Lovipo, and Alessandra De Rossi. Many celebrities and members of high society were present, and Heart wore a Grace Kelly-inspired wedding gown specially designed by Ezra Santos. Yet despite all the lavish luxuries and elegance on display, something crucial was missing. On the day of Love Marie's wedding, the biggest milestone of her life thus far, her parents did not attend. She walked down the aisle alone, and from that day forward, her identity in the public eye shifted completely. As always, she gave no comments on why her parents did not attend their daughter's wedding. But many easily put the dots together, making out that her parents still hadn't gotten off on a strong foot ever since she left home. On top of that, there were reports they had not given their blessing. However, Love Marie was focused on the future, and after the wedding came a drastic change in lifestyle. She had just become the spouse of a sitting senator, making public scrutiny twice as stressful as ever before. Not only did she have celebrity fans looking up to her, now she had the press examining every move she made. On top of that, many formal obligations came with her role, including attending official government events, state functions, and ceremonies that gave strict guidelines on behavior, dress, and interaction. She had less time for television sets and fashion shoots where creative control was allowed and spontaneity rewarded. Every move she made automatically had a symbolic meaning to the press, simply because she was associated with a public official. Things got even more stressful when her husband's political career moved him to governing Sorsogon, a province in the Philippines that effectively made her first lady of that region. That title came with its own set of duties on a whole new level, far from anything the entertainment industry had demanded. She did all this while trying to keep her personal career afloat. From acting to endorsements and emerging creative work, there was a need for constant coordination between two very different but highly important schedules. On one side were filming commitments, brand shoots, and fashion-related travel. On the other side were political obligations tied to her husband's career. The overlap of these worlds created a routine shaped by instant travel, planning, and time management. Love Marie constantly moved between international fashion circuits and domestic political events, often within short periods. She had to adapt to new schedules every other week depending on the political climate and demands of the people. This skill was important considering the many cultures that came with those who looked up to her. Simple things like greeting and postures varied greatly across different parts of the region, and she had to learn and adapt accordingly. Formal and respectful styles of greeting that were appropriate in one environment were easily misinterpreted in another, making image management a constant requirement rather than an occasional concern. Speaking of image management, Love Marie's social media presence had now become a focal point of attention. As someone that thrived in the fashion industry, she always displayed luxury items, international travel, and designer fashion that were widely circulated and discussed across the world. And while supporters viewed these as expressions of creative identity and success, many critics questioned her real source of luxury in connection with political life. Some even accused Love Marie's husband of corruption by claiming his wife was wearing and flaunting expensive things she couldn't afford before he became governor. The views on this were so polarizing that she had to address the matter directly on more than one occasion. In one interview, she made her position plain without apology, saying, "I spend a lot. That's why I work hard." She noted the one thing generally ignored by the public by revealing that she had always been financially dependent on herself, and that a prenuptial agreement, insisted upon by an old friend before the marriage, meant a complete separation of assets between her and her husband. Soon enough, she stopped answering questions about her lifestyle and focused more on her role in the global fashion industry. Criticisms kept coming in, except she was widely recognized and performing exceptionally well in the fashion industry. So much so that in 2017, she was invited to attend Paris Fashion Week for the first time. She was also invited to shows, occasions, and events by Maison Schiaparelli, Georges Hobeika, Giambattista Valli, Elie Saab, and Zuhair Murad, among others. And it wasn't long before she got more invitations for more prominent shows and was frequently seated in high-visibility areas, showing a strong respect within and beyond the fashion community. In 2018, the famous author Kevin Kwan, who wrote Crazy Rich Asians, chose Love Marie for a Harper's Bazaar feature on Asian-style icons who were changing the world of fashion. By 2019, the painting skills she learned to de-stress during her transition years were finally starting to pay off. She had now become known for painting directly onto luxury bags and accessories, combining her love of art with high-end fashion. She found more time to do this during the pandemic that had slowed everything down between 2019 and 2020. While travel stopped and every work moved online, Love Marie stayed home and kept creating, painting, styling, sharing her process on social media. Her online supporters increased exponentially, and when the world opened back up, she returned to Paris Fashion Week with more recognition than before. Within a week after resuming full-time, Love Marie became an official Dior ambassador and took her place in the front row at show after show. From Dior, Chanel, Elie Saab, and YSL. Heart Evangelista was everywhere. But while her career stayed strong, there was trouble at home. Married life was like a bad dream. The couple argued every day, and though both of them had made promises to keep all future struggles private, it didn't take long for the public to notice. The one moment that exposed everything was on August 1st, 2022, when people noticed she had removed the Escudero surname from her Instagram. She and her husband Chiz were rarely seen together. Love Marie later said in a vlog that she was going through personal struggles, but gave no details. When fans figured out that the marriage crisis was real and had possibly led to a divorce, she later confirmed in a vlog that it really happened, but they were going through a rough patch. Things had allegedly gotten to the point where she had packed her bags and left the property before coming back not long after noticing intentional efforts by her husband to make their marriage work. Later that year, without a formal announcement, the couple got married again with no indication of whether they truly got divorced, and shared the moment online with one photo that lacked an exhaustive caption. Bon years had passed since their first marriage, and this time her mother Cecilia was there with a smile on her face. 9 years late for their wedding, but she made it with best wishes from Love Marie's father. Meanwhile, her daughter's place in the fashion world continued to expand. By 2024 and into 2025, she remained part of the conversation, and even in seasons when she skipped Paris, her posts with major fashion houses still drew wide attention online. The earlier chapters of her life, from the family split, the political marriage, the rough patch to the quiet return, had now become part of her story. She was pulled in directions that most people would have had to choose between. She had to choose between family and freedom, love and public approval, art and politics, and between public life or private peace. Her choices were quick and instant, showing the bond of someone who wanted to shape their own story. She refused to be held back by cultural expectations and unwanted norms, and carved out a future where she lives on her terms. And with that, she restored her passions, family, marriage, and career. This is the story of Love Marie, the woman who persevered and conquered. Which part of Love Marie's story inspires you? Is there any part you feel we've left out? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.